How you doing, people? I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report, and we've got a first-time guest, Felicia Michaels, and returning Rubin Report professional, Max Lugavere, and let's get right to it. You know, I was on Twitter this morning, and I do my little morning scroll before I get out of bed, and I did not see one beheading video. I was absolutely shocked. Nothing new in the beheading world, but yeah, a lot of bad ISIS stuff is happening. And an Egyptian social media activist, her name is Aliyah Magda Almadi, she's 23 years old. She posted a rather interesting image on Facebook. Let's take a look at the image. Okay, so that is her facing us, and she has IS obviously written on her chest. She is menstruating on the ISIS flag there, and then that is another girl, and she's got the other IS, so ISIS, and she's pooping on the ISIS flag. She is getting a lot of shit, no pun intended, on Facebook for this. A lot of people are very upset with her. This is a major, bold statement by a true activist. She doesn't want these people taking over her country, her part of the world. I commend her for it, but she's really putting herself out there. Absolutely. So I guess I don't want to be too glib about this, but I will just start with this. Like, how long is this girl going to live? Because in this part of the world, you do something against the power. I don't know how, you know, we've done beheading videos for the last month. Like, how long before they get her?
Right. My question is, was it spontaneous? Are you just hanging out? You're on your period?
Really
your friend really needs to use the restroom? You happen to have a flag there? You know what I mean?
That is.
All right, we're going right to start. I like it. That's good. That's good. Go.
No, I mean, I think it's, you know, I applaud her because that's how, you know, I feel like the ideology of ISIS really should be treated, like the, you know, the crap that it is, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I worry for her. Where's she based again? Is she
She's in Egypt, supposedly.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure where she is right now, and I'm sure she's doing some sort of hiding situation. But she is in Egypt, at least last we heard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah. So does this work kind of in two ways? Because not only is she making a statement about ISIS, but she's also making a statement for women, and it's really not going that great for women in the Middle East either, right? So this is pretty good, just on the woman front.
I think it's pretty ballsy because she's doing it without a mask on. I mean, those guys are beheading with a cover over their face, and she's not doing that. So right away, to me, it takes a tremendous amount of balls and more balls than what they have, in my opinion. You know?
When we talk about this, do you think we strengthen her side, or do you think we strengthen the other side? Because for, you know, on one hand, it's we bring attention to it, and on the other hand, it's like, well, then they go, see, the Western media is showing this girl shitting on us because they hate us.
Yeah, everything that I've seen from ISIS or the Islamic State, whatever they're being referred to as now, I mean, to me, they're almost worse than Nazis. They're not friends of women. They're terrible, terrible people.
They're not friends of women, to say,
to say
put
the
it
least.
mildly.
The religious police, I saw them patrolling Raqqa. That's the name of the town that they've taken over now in northern Syria, right? And they're just like, I mean, what a cancer on humanity they are. It's just, you know, absurd.
Yeah. All right. Well, you've given me a good segment here, good segue here, because now there are videos coming out showing the actual brainwashing that ISIS is doing to their children. So we've got some video from the Middle East Media Research Institute, and it appears to show a young boy pledging allegiance to ISIS. Let's take a look.
ألا أنازع الأمر أهله
ولا أنازع الأمر أهله
إلا أن أرى كفرا بواحا
عندي فيه من الله برهان
والله على ما نقول شهيد. بارك الله فيك.
ايش تحدثنا عن البيعة الآن؟ لما بعت ايش تحس الآن؟ ايش احساسك لما بيعت الدولة الإسلامية؟
يعني إحساس جيد.
ايه. وانت تعرف انه بيعت امير المؤمنين على السمع والطاعة في المنشط والمكره، اذا انت مستعد ان تقتل في سبيل الله الآن؟
إن شاء الله.
بارك الله فيك. السلام عليكم.
Okay, all right, that seems pretty scary to me. How do we, I mean, this is pure brainwashing, like at the most base level, right?
I mean, as a parent, you don't know what's going on before or after that. It is brainwashing, you know. I think it's wrong.
What could be going on after that?
No, I mean, but you don't know, you know, exactly what they're saying to that child before and or after, you know, or what the atmosphere is. Look, it's absolutely wrong and it's hideous, you know, but I mean, I don't want you to think I'm defending it.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
You know.
I think it's. They're a disgusting group. I have a problem with the indoctrination of children into any religion. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's that. You know, there's a relativity there that I think we can debate. But yeah, the fact that they're making this kid cop to being willing to kill himself in the name of Allah, it's just completely abominable.
So the indoctrination at any level, because I'm sure people are going to watch this and they're going to say, well, people in the United States are indoctrinated to believe this or that about. So, but is there something a little different about that? I don't think we're totally indoctrinated to be killing people here. Now that being said, yes, of course we've killed all kinds of people, and we still have drone strikes in Pakistan and all kinds of horrible stuff. But something seems a little different to me. Is that? Is there something a little different than our indoctrination?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Look, it's wrong. They are brainwashing. But what I'm saying is you don't know what's being said to the kid, like, oh, let's make a little video. Like, you don't know exactly how that's coming about. I have children, you don't know. You can't always make a kid go on camera and do these things. Or they'll say, what we're going to do is this, and we're going to put it on this. You know what I mean? Like, and the child doesn't understand it. You know, it is brainwashing, but the child really doesn't understand. When you say to a little kid, you're going to die or get killed, they're not really understanding that at that age, you know?
Yeah, how much of this is just pure propaganda? Because part of me, when we've shown these things and the beheadings and all that stuff, like, I don't want to overplay what they really are. But yet I still think it's important that we show some of this stuff. You know, Twitter took down the video when they beheaded James Foley a couple of weeks ago. They were suspending accounts that posted the video. Yeah. But to me, it's like we got to sort of show this stuff so at least we know what we're talking about. But do you think we strengthen them sort of by showing this stuff and talking about it? So I sort of asked you that before, but now we see it again here.
I do think we strengthen them by people watching the James Foley video. Like, I had a moment where I was like, in a fucked up way, I do want to see it, but I don't want to see it because I don't want my one little click to even count on any kind of site or any kind of Twitter feed. You know, I don't want that to count. But on the other hand, I think the woman with the flag, I mean, and taking in her menstruating on that, to me, that's not strengthening their point of view at all. But the James Foley video, for sure.
For the record, I'm pretty sure the ad rate on a beheading video is pretty low, so I wouldn't worry about your click. I know what our ad rates are around here.
But I'm just saying, not the ad rate. That's very funny, by the way. But not the ad rate. But I'm just saying, I don't even want it to count, period, or know that I did that, or even in my own household to give them any kind of props. I don't even want to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a great point because it does help perpetuate the fear, which, they're terrorists, that's what they want. They want people to be afraid of them. But I also kind of think that we need to know who's out there, especially when you hear things, like the hundreds of I don't know if they're Americans or just people from elsewhere in the world that have joined the ISIS army. And,
well, supposedly there's a ton of British people. Now they've identified the guy that killed James Foley, and he was a British national. So yeah, there's tons and tons of people. So right now we're doing surveillance flights over Syria, where we're trying to figure out where ISIS is on the ground and what we can do. We're also doing pinpoint strikes against ISIS in Iraq. And now the FBI issued a kind of interesting statement about what's going on. Let's take a look. It is difficult to predict triggers that will contribute to homegrown violent extremists attempting acts of violence. Lone wolf terrorists present law enforcement with limited opportunities to detect and disrupt plots, which frequently involve simple plotting against targets of opportunity. So basically what they're saying is we're doing all this stuff there, and there's a chance that they're going to hit us here. So we got a theme here of like fear-mongering kind of stuff. But do we have to worry that any of this stuff is going to come here?
I think we absolutely have to worry about lone wolves. I would be more concerned about people like that than actual groups over here colluding to do something, you know. That's what I would be more concerned about.
Although Rick Perry said ISIS is coming through the Mexican border. That's what he said.
Rick Perry, man, that guy. He's had a bit of it.
I thought he was in jail, actually.
Yeah,
but
right?
But that's what he said.
Didn't they find, there was an American that was killed last weekend, right, who had joined ISIS. So, I mean, I worry that there are people with American passports that have, converted to this horrific ideology and are now...
Right, and then they're going to come back here.
So I think it's it's worth looking into and being mindful of.
Yeah,
sure.
So White House Press Secretary Jay Earnest chimed in on it as well. We're concerned about the threat that is posed by ISIL, but it is the assessment, as stated by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff by the intelligence community, that there currently is not an active plot underway to attack the homeland by ISIL. You know, I don't know. When I hear this stuff, I kind of think like, remember before 9/11 when everybody was saying, well, Bush was warned a zillion times. And then on another part, it's like, all right, if they don't know, they don't know. I guess for me, it's like, I don't know what to believe anymore. Do you suffer from some of that too?
Well, I don't know what to believe, other than the fact that don't believe anything. You know what I mean? Like you can't. Right. I think in the last 5 years with the news media, we were talking earlier about how everything isn't vetted like it used to be, and how rumors can run amok within the news organization. I think you can't believe everything.
Yeah. So how much of this is just that? Like I turn on CNN and like they got one guy on one side and one guy on the other, and then they don't analyze what they say. They just say it. And then you obviously know what you're getting out of Fox, and you know what you're getting out of MSNBC. So there's just nobody, like there's nothing that I turn on where I'm like, oh, now I got sort of like an honest assessment.
That's why I watch the Rubin Report.
That's why you're on the Rubin Report.
That's why I'm on the Rubin Report.
But I mean, that's what I'm trying to do is some, like, I don't have all the answers, but we can at least discuss this in some kind of open-ended way to make people think or do a little bit of research. But really, like, how do you go about getting your information on this? Like, what you're going to trust? You watch the Vice stuff, obviously.
Yeah, you know what? I was watching, if you Google Vice, they've done a fantastic 5-part documentary about ISIS where they, I mean, like, the journalists that they have working for them, I can't even imagine, like, the situations that they put themselves in. But yeah, that's, I think, one of the best things that I've seen, the Vice coverage of ISIS and what's going on in Syria. Like, just incredible, you know, scenes of their indoctrination of children, the way they police Raqqa, you know, like making sure that the women are wearing, like, you know, canvas, you know, covering everything except for their eyes. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm watching an episode of Homeland or something. I just started watching that show. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Where do you stand on like the airstrikes and all this stuff? Like, are you cool with it? Everyone seems to be cool with airstrikes right now.
Right.
That's like the cool thing. Like, no boots on the ground. Nobody wants that. But like airstrikes, yeah.
I actually am an Army brat, so my father has incredible medical issues due to being in Vietnam. He's deaf, he can barely see, you know, and amongst other things. And I feel like no boots on the ground. But then it's hard for me to say we should only air bomb if we're having such a big discussion about the Palestinians and the Israelis. Like, you know what I mean? We all have an opinion about that, but now let's, you know what I mean? Let's not even talk about airstrikes in Syria. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. So is that also part of it, that we have such an inability to have more than one conversation at a time in America? Like, we just went through like a month-long Gaza thing where that's all everyone talked about. Now that sort of seems like a ceasefire is going to hold as of yesterday. So now we can move on to something else. Like, we seem completely unable to talk about two things at once. What's that about?
I think that we should.
Is that just the Twitter generation?
We should combine our conversation with the Islamic State with our conversation about surrounding Ebola by dropping Ebola into, you know, into the hive mind of the IS.
People are going to think you're serious about that. I would drop PlayStation 4 because then you just hook that thing up and then they have something else to do, or just give them a lot of porn.
Yeah,
don't you think if they had more access to porn?
Because they're all doing it for the virgins, right?
Right.
Like, just to show that they're all just incredibly sexually
I
frustrated.
think they have enough access to porn.
You think they have plenty of access?
If my kids have access to porn, those terrorists have access to porn.
Yeah.
Jeez.
All right, so final thought on all this ISIS stuff is, are we just damned if we do, damned if we don't? Like, we fucked up with the first Iraq war, then we left, the whole place went to shit. These Yazidi that were on the mountain, 48,000 of them were gonna get slaughtered. Nobody did anything, so we ended up saving them, but now more are being killed now. Like, it's just this endless, like, if the US helps, it's always good sort of short term, then we fuck everything up, then we help. Like, it's just, is that it? Is that our place in the world forever?
I think it's going to be, that's how it's going to be forever unless people understand nothing is a temporary fix. You know, I got to perform for the troops as a comedian in Iraq, and even then, and this was 4 years ago, as we were out in the forward operating bases doing comedy, you would be standing next to one or two soldiers here and there, and they would all say, "This is for nothing. As soon as we leave, this is done."
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. And like with my parents, my mother was from Berlin, Germany. My father was in the Army. She was a war bride. It's like we were there for 30, 40 years. And that's, if we're going to do something, people need to understand that's the commitment you have to make.
Yeah,
it's
by the
not
way,
just,
we still have like 40,000 troops in Germany now. Nobody knows why they're there. I don't think they have to be there at this point. But.
Well, because I think, and I could be completely wrong, it's like when they airlift people out or they need to refuel and a bunch of stuff. I think that's that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's interesting to me that people just don't understand. Nothing is a temporary fix.
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous.
Well, I think that's a really great point. Why do you think the troops knew it 4 years ago? You know, like, not that we should have stayed. We obviously can't just stay everywhere forever. But like, why, if troops were talking about it to the comedians?
I feel like it, because with my experience with that, and I don't mean to take so much time, but my experience with that is that, you know, when they had these forward operating bases, they did have people from the community participating in the forward operating bases. Maybe they helped cook or clean or whatever they did, but it was usually outcasts from the Iraqi community. So, the people that were entrenched within families and within tribes that had good standing weren't participating. And when you're an American soldier and you're seeing you know what I mean, that the outcast of their society being like they had, the tendency was a lot of gay men or women that didn't have good standing in the community that were participating and helping the Americans, you know.
I mean, I've never heard that before. That's fascinating.
That's my take on it, you know. So I could be completely wrong, but for a young soldier, a 22-year-old kid from East LA saying, yeah, this is silliness. This is silliness. Makes you really think, God, all this money that was spent here and all this, and if you're performing as a woman, I can say whatever I want to arguably the strongest, physically strongest, least educated men in our country, and they're so appreciative that people made the trip, or you can say whatever you want. And then to see a woman, Iraqi woman, listening and then put her thing on and then have to, you know, go 50 feet outside the wall and she can't even look a man in the eye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's astounding. So I think if young soldiers can figure that out, the fact that, you know, politicians can't is really amazing to me.
Well, I can't possibly end the segment any better than that, so there you go. Burger King, do you want a Whopper on a donut? You might just be able to get one, because that's right, Burger King bought Canadian donut chain Tim Hortons for $11.4 billion. We've got some more info on the deal. With an estimated $23 billion in sales and 18,000 restaurants in 100 countries, the new entity would be the third biggest fast food chain by sales. Berkshire Hathaway chief Warren Buffett will be putting up $3 billion in the deal. He's going to get back preferred stock that will pay him a dividend. And after the deal was made official, Burger King's stock price climbed up about 16% from its closing price on Friday. Tim Hortons jumped about 30%. We've got a little more info for you. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. So in the US, companies pay up to 35% tax rate on both domestic income and overseas sales. Canada levies its federal corporate tax rate of 15% only on sales within its borders, then allows companies to pay only foreign taxes on sales abroad. If you need to pause it for a second and reread that, this is where it kind of gets good. Burger King is still going to pay the same US taxes on its sales here, but will only have to pay Canadian taxes on its Canadian sales, Mexican taxes on its Mexican sales, and so on. Okay, so this is interesting because everyone said this was about taxes, and the Burger King people kind of said it wasn't about taxes, but yes, it's about taxes. Their US taxes are going to stay the same, and everything else that they do outside of US borders and Canadian borders will be taxed less. So I want to start with Warren Buffett, though, because everyone loves this guy, right? Everybody loves Warren Buffett, and everyone thinks he's like the god of the markets and all that stuff. Should we be a little annoyed at Mr. Buffett right now for doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's obvious that this is a move to, you know, mitigate tax costs for Burger King, right? I mean, obviously they're gonna deny it, but that's like being shocked that they're gonna try to like reduce their tax costs is like being shocked that they're not really concerned about the health of Americans. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, right?
I thought the Whopper was a healthy alternative
product, right?
to the Big Mac.
Amazing.
No.
Yeah, so I think it's a crappy move, but.
Warren Buffett, are you pissed at him?
You know what? I am a big fan of Warren Buffett, so I'm not going to lie.
Everyone loves him.
I'm surprised. I'm really surprised, and I think it's a terrible move. I mean, they're saying that corporate taxes here are 35%, and in Canada it's 15%. But in actuality, whatever they write off the corporations I think I read today that Burger King pays 27% taxes on the U.S. revenues. I could be completely wrong. But this is what makes me angry about, is that you're trying to shirk taxes. Your workers don't make enough money, and they're accepting, a lot of them are on welfare. Your trucks that are trucking all this food to Canada and to Mexico, even in the United States, are on government roads, and that you're shirking your tax responsibility, yet using all the services. I think that's incredibly short-sighted.
Isn't that the most American thing you can do? Taking advantage of the system, like in a weird way, you know what I mean? We had Mitt Romney, a guy that was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, running for president, and he was hiding money in the Cayman Islands and admitted it, like openly did it. And that was the best guy the Republicans could put up. Like, our system is so fucked that, like, it basically, the worse you screw the system, the more you're rewarded.
Right.
Isn't that isn't that how we've sort of built this thing at this point?
Yeah, it sucks. I think that people would feel a lot less uncomfortable about this if the company involved in this so-called tax inversion were benign. Like, apparently Walgreens attempted to do something recently like that, but then people boycotted it and they changed their mind, right? But Burger King makes people fat and diabetic. You know, it's like one of those companies that, like, doesn't really add anything positive to the world. In fact, they take away from people's health, and so that's why I don't feel sorry for them that they're now encircled in this controversy.
That's an interesting idea, though. So maybe if they were a different business, like they're in the business, fast food, we know what it's the business of. It's in the business just, max profits, obviously, and giving us a lot of shitty food. If they maybe were in the business of something with a slightly loftier goal or something, you think people would be angrier? Like, does that go to the business end of it or something like that?
I think people need to make themselves more aware of what companies are actually doing that. I mean, in a way, it's a good thing that Burger King is doing it, because it puts more of a spotlight on the whole situation. I mean, if you go on the internet, you can look up several, tens and tens of companies that are doing this, that are in medicine or in Tyco is a company that does that. And, I mean, I definitely think that everyone should boycott Burger King, for sure.
Boycott Burger King, hashtag boycott Burger King. Felicia
or if people do go to Burger King, then they should pay back, they should give us taxes for eating their food, like a 10% tax.
That is not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, isn't this really about our tax system here? I mean, is our corporate tax rate just too high? Like, I mean, if the country that borders us to the north, that's a pretty decent country, Canada, can beat us at this, like, shouldn't this really be not about Burger King, but about the way our government
doesn't provide health care, like, for free for its citizens, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know, I've been boycotting Burger King for 20 years just because I, choose health, but, like, it goes back to what you were saying before, like, in the spirit of capitalism, is it really that, shocking of a thing that a company would want to, like, seek out its best interests, financially speaking? But I don't know.
So almost everything we do here at the end of the day comes down to money and politics, because, Wall Street bought the politicians that set up the regulations that allow companies to do this. Is that really the answer when it comes down to it? Like, this is just about getting money out of politics? Is that the only way that you can get politicians who will lean on Wall Street, and then once they're leaning on Wall Street will force the companies to do different practices? It's a big one, but answer it with it.
I just think as long as there's a reflection of what people think to the companies and to politicians, that slow change will come. As Walgreens, people boycotted that, they changed their minds. I think people really need to choose for themselves. I feel like Americans sometimes are super lazy about understanding the news. We only go to a news source, on nightly television. If I read the news, I read the Huffington Post, which doesn't always have actual news, but I also read The Guardian UK. You know what I mean? You have to make yourself aware. And I think when people bitch about things like the Burger King tax evasion or inversion thing, that they should vote with their money and not eat at Burger King or not go to Walgreens or not. I really think people should stop talking so much crap about politicians and start doing more personal action.
Right. So basically, we just need a list. You can't eat Chick-fil-A because of the gay chicken thing. You can't eat Burger King because of the taxes. What else? McDonald's pink slime. We're going to get to that in a little bit. Give me one more fast. Just make one up. So what? Kentucky Fried Chicken. What are they up to again? Just make it
what
up.
did they?
I don't know. Just
Torture chickens, yeah. They like
I'm sure
slice their necks and they're not fully dead
I'm sure
by the
they're
time
doing
they're
hard.
dismantling them.
They're doing horrible things to chickens. Okay, let's move on. Are you concerned that the NSA is tracking you online and doing all kinds of shady things behind the scenes? Well, now it's going to be in front of the scenes. That's right. The National Science Foundation is financing a web service that is going to monitor, quote, suspicious memes on Twitter. So now it's not just the email that they're doing on the DL. It's everything that you put out there. We've got some more info for you. The, quote, Truthy database created by researchers at Indiana University is designed to detect political smears, astroturfing, misinformation, and other social pollution. That seems like a scary phrase to me. The open source platform could mitigate the diffusion of false and misleading ideas, detect hate speech and subversive propaganda, and assist in the preservation of open debate. And a little more. While the vast majority of memes arise in a perfectly organic manner driven by the complex mechanisms of life on the web, some are engineered by the shady machinery of high-profile congressional campaigns. Truthy claims to be nonpartisan. However, the project's leaders proclaims his support for numerous progressive advocacy groups, including Obama's Organizing for Action, MoveOn.org, Greenpeace, Amnesty International, Sierra Club, and more. So that's from the Free Beacon and in Indiana U. We don't quote the Free Beacon here often at the Young Turks, but I thought this was kind of interesting because it could go either way. Right now, Obama's in power, and if you don't like him, they could be tracking you, and then, you know what, a Republican comes into power, and then they could be tracking the other guy, so I think we have to talk about this kind of stuff. With all the NSA stuff, though, is this like, does this seem like nothing to you, or does this seem like this is the stuff that you're putting out publicly, and they're just getting, you know, it's not that they're necessarily, it's not that the government is watching your feed constantly. It's just that they're going to be aggregating all this stuff and seeing, is everything true? I mean, half the shit you see on the internet is not true, probably 90% of it. So there's a lot going on here. Take it away.
Well, I have a personal story. I have this friend who 10 years ago was saying, sugar causes cancer. You should put tape over your your camera on your computer. Yeah. And I remember making... I
don't see how those two are connected.
I know, but she was just always one of these theorist kind of people. Yeah. And I remember making fun of her like, oh yeah, the people are trying to watch me. And you know what, 2 days ago, put a little piece on my camera. I mean, the reality is, they have been watching, or they've been aggregating for years, and it's for people to be so surprised by it is silly. If you are on a computer or any electronic device that can have a beacon or whatever, they are capable of watching you, and everyone just needs to deal with that. It's going to happen. For me, I personally don't care, because the worst they're going to find out is I have a severe case of silly girl-itis. So that's it. You know what I mean? Like, who is doing all this stuff that they're so concerned the government is watching? You know?
But you never know where, you don't want the government to have too much power to just be watching what you're doing all the time. They just have too much power. They just do. Yeah. So is there a distinction here between like us policing ourselves? Because that's what this is. That's why in a weird way this seems almost more perverse to me. Like, we know what the government's doing and it's gross and we complain about it all the time. But this is like, you're going to be like seeing a meme that you don't like and like flag it, and then it's going to go into the database. Like, we're going to be watching each other now. This is like.
I mean, I think that we live in a world where, we were talking about the Islamic State before. They're using Twitter to spread their propaganda, right? So I think that building smarter algorithms to look at data en masse and organize it in a way that that it makes sense, I think is useful. Like, I was looking at the website for Truthy, and it's going to be open source. They have APIs available for people to mine the data and use it for interesting purposes. They've got whole graphics visualization stuff going on. So I don't think it didn't strike me as being necessarily that evil off the bat, you know? Like, it kind of reminded me of the Obama Brain Initiative, which I think is amazing, and so, yeah, like, I didn't think it sounded that bad.
Every time we do one of these stories, I immediately go to the future is going to be evil, and they're coming to get us. But you often bring it back to, like, not everything, that the cars aren't automatically going to all kill us, and the robots aren't, the sex robots, they're not going to necessarily strangle you. I have that feeling.
I'm a techno-optimist, I choose to err on the side of optimism, because I think that technology, there are some costs to You know, the fact that like I have all of the world's knowledge in my pocket on my iPhone. I forget numbers a lot more easily, and the like. You know, I've outsourced the left brain, but I think that we have a lot more to gain from technology than to lose if that power is, you know, put into the right hands and made as democratic as possible. I think having a technology like this being open source, I think, is a sort of good way to, you know, accomplish that.
Yeah, we did a story on this once before, but do you think the internet needs like a Bill of Rights, like something that supersedes governments, but like just like 10 rules that govern the actual internet and the freedoms and the rights that we have and what the governments can and can't do? Now, I know this is total pie in the sky and they're never going to go for it and all that, but
I kind of wish that people aren't allowed to post unless it's verified who they are in some sense. But then on the other hand, I see where that's incorrect and where that could lead to a bunch of problems, and that being subversive and wanting to post anonymously is a powerful, dirty feeling. But that being said, if I was on the internet and I was writing all these terrible things all on the Huffington Post or wherever it is, and it's anonymous, I can't say those same terrible things to you, because even if you're telling me to shut up, I would pick up that you think I'm crazy, you know what I mean? So I do feel like in some way I wish everyone wouldn't be able to put stuff on the internet unless it was verified. There's no way to do that, but I wish it would kind of be that way sometimes.
Is it also slightly different when people in Western countries do it versus if you were in Egypt during the revolution, you maybe needed to be anonymous to be able to get the information out there about where they should go, versus what happens in Western societies where if you go on Huffington Post, it's just anonymous crazy people screaming at each other. So there is there's some kind of distinction there, right?
Right. It is anonymous crazy people here in America. But then you're right, in other countries, right, that's true. But in other countries where they're trying to get some message across and they do need to be anonymous for their own safety, I mean, I do understand that. So I don't know, it's a tricky question.
On that note, as I say every day, don't debate with a Twitter egg. That is pretty much the best thing that you can do. But this is a perfect segue because a new study released by Pew and the Internet and American Life Project has revealed that basically we are now self-censoring ourselves. So this isn't about the government, this isn't about people talking about you, we're actually doing it to ourselves. And let's look at the study's findings from Rutgers University. They found that while 86% of Americans would be willing to have a conversation about an issue in person, just 42% of Facebook and Twitter users were willing to post about it. So this is you'll do something actually in person when it's not supposedly being recorded, but then you don't really want to make your statement when it's going to stick around for a while. And then if people think their opinions would be well received, they're more likely to post about the topic. But even the thought that some of their followers and friends might disagree led many to self-censor. So I think this is really, really fascinating because we do all this stuff online. We put all this stuff out there. We're all on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and everything else, and we're doing it to ourselves. It's not just the government doing it to us. As a comedian, you put stuff out there. You're paid to say what you think. Do you do any of this? Do you partake in the self-censorship?
I do. I think the difference is, like I said, if I'm talking to a person and we're talking about something that's pretty dark and would agitate others, even if I make a blanket statement about something, you might give me, a response, and then I'm like, oh, you might have a point. But if you put something just cold on Twitter or Facebook, then you're drawing people that you don't even know, and then people just lose their minds. And so there's no give and take. Yeah. And because it's Twitter, because it's Facebook, like a text, you can't read exactly how people are meaning stuff. Some stuff you don't need to read exactly because it's pretty foul. Yeah. But I do think that's the reason if I put something up and then people are, I'll take it down, just because it's not a real back and forth discussion, and if I do learn something from it, I'm like, hey, I don't really like my position on that, I kind of changed my mind because someone gave me a piece of information that made me change my mind, then it's out there now. And people, it's not forgiven like it's a conversation between you and I. Now it's out there, and it's on you for forever. Forever,
they're watching you forever. Self-censor, do you do it, the self-censoring?
It's funny, I have done it, and the most recent example I could give is I think that there was a movie that came out recently called Boyhood by Richard Linklater, who I think is a genius. He's a genius. I didn't think the movie was that good, but it had like a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, and everybody that I know was just raving about it, and I didn't think it was that good. And I was like debating whether or not to tweet that I really didn't think it was that impressive, and I opted not to tweet it because, for a number of reasons, because I felt like it was, you know, maybe I was missing something. You know, obviously I self-censored. You know, I didn't say what I really felt, but then. You know, I thought to myself that I'm such a fan of his anyway that why would I want to like say something not nice about his work, you know?
Yeah.
But,
well, first off, thank you for unself-censoring right now.
Yeah.
So you didn't want to do it on Twitter, you were willing to do it on YouTube. That's interesting. You should talk to your therapist about that. Yeah, do you think it's partly because of all the apologies that we see celebrities having to make? That's when I was reading this, that's what I kept thinking. Like everybody now immediately says something and apologies, and we can list them all, you know, from Duck Dynasty on down. Do you think that people, that regular citizens, are eventually going to be held to the same standards that all the public people are? And I think that's part of it. What's going on here? People are afraid that their boss is going to see something. You know, this is what you're talking about the difference between a one-on-one conversation and a public thing. But you should be allowed to have your own political views or views on social stuff without the fear that, you know, your boss is going to see it and get fired, you know, get you fired or whatever.
Right. Well, look, if you're working at a Burger King, let's just say, and people are at the register and you're spouting some religious ideology, you know what I mean? But that's not correct either. But if you're on social media and your boss is on your Facebook, I mean, you have to expect that people are going to be negative about that as much as they're going to be positive about that. And it's there forever, and it will follow you forever.
So if you are working at Burger King, let's use that example for a second. If you're working at Burger King, obviously you can't do it right to their faces. But if you then have a Twitter account that has your real name on it, and maybe it does, let's say it doesn't say that you work at Burger King, and you're writing some crazy shit. You're for the KKK, I don't know. Should Burger King be allowed to fire you? Even if you don't say you work for Burger King, but they know with a simple Google search.
That's good.
We're slightly off topic here, but
no, I think that people should be held accountable for their actions online for sure. Yeah, I would be curious to know what it is about, you know, presenting a differing opinion that people are actually afraid of. Is it that they're afraid of being the ugly duckling, or are they afraid of not getting as many likes? Like, there are a few confounding variables in there that I feel like should be considered.
Yeah. Is it also that we just live in a crazy time right now, as we've been talking about with all this? Like, we have so much stuff between Middle East and Ebola and NSA and like just all this crazy stuff that I do sense online now. People are just yelling at each other constantly. And I do try my best to follow people I don't like, almost as much as I follow people I like. And sometimes I don't succeed and I unfollow people because I can't take it anymore. But like, I try to, because I don't want to live in that echo chamber. Do you try to follow some people that you don't agree with?
I do, because putting stuff on Facebook and Twitter, I mean, for me, the thing that I have the most fear of getting called out is not being knowledgeable enough about what I'm talking about, you know? So I do...
That's never stopped anybody else, so I don't see why.
But I don't want to embarrass myself in that way of just that I am not well-read enough about a certain subject. So, but that being said, I mean, I do think that people should be held more responsible for what they're saying, and not to just the public, but to themselves, and not just to be talking out of their butts. You know,
to that point, when this whole Yazidi thing happened on the mountain a couple of weeks ago, I tweeted that something like, you know, the Yazidi are trapped on a mountain, ISIS is about to kill them, the world doesn't care. It got 1,800 retweets. It was the #1 retweeted thing about the Yazidi, and then we had airstrikes the next day. I was like, wow, maybe my little tweet had something to do with this. The picture that I attached to it was a wrong picture. It was from Syria from like 2 years before. So I made a mistake, and it's like, then I did issue a retraction for that, but like...
You didn't delete the tweet though, did you?
I didn't, you can't, I mean, at that many retweets, you can't delete. So I guess that was the message here. Don't delete a tweet if you have that many retweets. Okay, on a final note, pink slime, you know about pink slime. We've talked a lot about pink slime. It is making its way back for a series of reasons. Let's look at what pink slime looks like first. So this is what actual pink slime, and if you haven't seen our videos on pink slime, I highly recommend you just Google, we'll annotate to our old pink slime video. So this is what pink slime looks like, and basically what pink slime is just the awful pieces of the meat because they want the cheapest pieces, the pieces that literally like are falling off the bone, that are all gross and disgusting, and then they jam them together, they run them through ammonia to get all the bacteria off. It's a pretty awful situation. We'll get to more about that in a second. Now let's look at the picture that everyone thinks of pink slime. So this is the rumored picture of what pink slime really looks like. So the other one is what it does look like. This is the rumored picture of what it may look like in like an earlier state or something like that. And now let's look at a little bit of the background story on pink slime's demise. In 2012, ABC News and celebrity chef Jamie Oliver exposed the low-cost meat product pink slime. McDonald's and Taco Bell renounced it, and public schools around the country stopped serving it. By May 2012, Beef Products Inc., the inventor of the product, was on the brink of collapse, closing 3 of its 4 plants and laying off 700 people. But in August, BPI reopened one of its closed plants. And a little bit more for you. This is from Dan Hale, who's an animal science professor at Texas A&M. He said the main issue is the drought. A lot of the U.S., especially the parts that raise cattle, have experienced a severe drought, and those animals are no longer available for producing calves that we can in turn generate for beef trimmings. So a lot of the global warming people are going to say there's some issues there because, you know, the cow farts are also creating methane, and then that heats up the world. Max, you know all about that. You're our cow fart guy.
Apparently.
Yeah, so there's a series of problems here. Pink slime, of course, is cheaper. When you make this meat, it's a lot cheaper because you're getting those crappy little extra pieces instead of the good cuts. The science is inconclusive, as far as I can tell, of whether this is actually worse for you once you eat it. People say it's not going to kill you. The idea of eating something that's been washed in ammonia seems kind of disgusting to me. But this is one of the stories where all the science people start yelling at me because it seems inconclusive. Can you clean up anything of what I just said? Because I know you know a bit about it.
Well, I think that, first of all, it sounds disgusting. It is true that your body generates a small amount of ammonia, but that's what you excrete in your urine. So it's a waste product in the body. Yeah, the meat that they use is from parts that I think are like closer to the surface or something, and so they're very, you know, likely contaminated with things like E. coli and stuff. It's a really gross thing. But then again, how do you get a burger for 80 cents without using, you know, meat that's questionable?
Right.
You know?
So it's a couple things that are happening here. Partly we have less access to the animals because of the drought and other climate-related things. Then on top of that, we have a bad economy, so people don't want to spend as much. So you want an 80-cent hamburger. Well, then that's how you're going to get it that way. This story to me is like everything, which is why we talk about it all the time, because it's like about the gross food that we eat. It's about the economic disaster we're in. It's about the earth. It's a little something for everybody, don't you think?
My question is, if you're at the grocery store, does it say it on the packaging?
Pink slime?
No,
In a big pink
or
sticker.
the ammonia or all those, is that said on the packaging?
So they don't have to. They don't have to. We did a story a couple weeks ago how even the phrase all natural actually means nothing. It's on everything all the time, all natural. But no, they don't have to say it. So for example, if you were to get Trader Joe's, just like ground beef from Trader Joe's, technically they could be using the pink slime, this ammonia thing. I did a little Googling, they don't do it, so I'm still okay getting my meat there. But yeah, you don't know, and so is that a bigger part of the problem too, that we don't package things correctly and our labeling and all that?
That's a huge part of the problem. I absolutely do.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's efforts underway, and I don't know where they currently stand, to get GMO products labeled, mandatorily. Is that a word?
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah. So
they're going to make them do it. I think is what you were.
And I think that would be definitely very helpful as far as this pink slime stuff goes, because it's gross. It's definitely not something I want to consume.
Yeah. All right. So for the people that say, though, the lower economic end of the spectrum, that those people need options, why is it that we can't make healthy food cheaper? That's what I think all the time. Like it seems to me all the processed stuff, and it goes through so many different things to become what it is in that frozen package. Like that should be more expensive rather than the stuff that just pops out of the earth and you eat it. And yet for some reason, that's reversed. What do we do so that people that can't afford this stuff can eat healthier?
That's such a tough question. I don't know if I have an exact answer for that. All I can
I'll
say
need
is,
an exact
answer. All I can say is I do think it should be on packaging. I think it should not in any sense be served to school children at all, because they're going to have it in their system for the longest. You know, I think that's not correct, and I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I think we have to be more responsible as a society in understanding when the food chain ebbs and flows, that we have to kind of go with it. You know, we get enough protein in our diets, you know, as far as other things that we consume, and I don't know what the answer is as far as poverty, people that are underserved, how they go about it. I don't know what the answer should be.
Do you think the answer partly is that we need to show some of the, like if we could get a real expose on how this stuff is done, because it's hard to get video of it, of the actual process, which is why we don't have video to show you guys right now. Like,
I think education plays a huge role in it. I mean, it's, you know, some people. I was actually on the episode when McDonald's voluntarily when they removed the pink slime from there.
When we did our original episode. Okay, so we'll annotate to that right now.
Yeah, and I think that it's always an educational issue. You know, I think that the more people can understand how unhealthy this stuff is for you, they would then opt for maybe the more expensive products, which would, you know, demand obviously would bring the price down. But in the end, you know, whether or not you're spending more at the checkout at your supermarket, I mean, it's going to alleviate healthcare costs down the road. I mean, if you think that like grass-fed meat is expensive, look at cancer, man. That's like a really expensive thing. Cardiovascular disease, man. It's chronic disease is like the most expensive thing. So, I think education. I think that there needs to be what you were saying, a big expose.
I think education is the right answer, hearing you say that, because then I think about my children. My children learn how to do PowerPoint in 7th grade. You know what? Why not take that off the table and teach them how to read labels?
Yeah.
You know, instead of focusing on technology, 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 how about some base stuff, you know, that they can understand? Even boys who don't do a lot of, men, I mean, they do shop, but I'm saying generally in families, it's not the man who shops everything. But it should be overall education towards our children of what you're eating and what a diet should consist of. That's more than what they're giving now, because everyone wants everyone to be on the internet.
You guys have given me a perfect out to this show, education. I think we're doing a little of that here, and if we maybe brought up something that you don't think we gave you the correct answer to, well then you have a computer. I'm pretty sure you're on it right now. Felicia, Max, thank you guys. Their Twitters are right down below, and check them out. We'll put websites and all that good stuff, and we will see you again next week. Thank you guys.